Hey everybody, my name's Noah. I am super excited to talk with you about Google Search Console data. We're going to be talking about a ton of things. We're going to look at the Search Console user interface and some new hidden gems inside it. We're also going to learn why that tool isn't quite good enough for performing search analysis. We'll turn our attention a little bit towards Google Data Studio and its native Search Console connectors so you can understand what the limitations of that tooling are. And by the end of this talk, you're going to be absolutely foaming at the mouth with excitement to get your hands on Google Search Console data coming out of the API. And you're going to want to incorporate the tooling that I'm going to share with you, which is taking that data from the API, pushing it up to Google BigQuery, and then visualizing that data in the front end with tooling that's built inside Google Data Studio. To get started, we're going to jump to my favorite image of space. It's called the Hubble Ultra Deep Field. This is one of the pinnacles of human scientific achievement. In 2003 to 2004, Hubble was pointed at the darkest section of the sky. What's amazing is that this view is about the same size of the sky as a baseball held about 100 yards away from you, which is minuscule. What's amazing about it is that beforehand we saw the naked eye was able to perceive just darkness. And after Hubble took these images, we're able to see 10,000 galaxies in that tiny little speck of the sky. And the reason why this is really important and related to search is that having data from Google Search Console's API is a lot like unleashing the power of Hubble on our search data. Let's dive in. We're going to start our tour in Google Search Console's interface. We're going to look at the newest piece of functionality that Google just released. I think it's really cool. It's really exciting for a lot of folks. It's already been in Data Studio for a long period of time. It's regex. You can do two different types of regex. You can target terms that match, and you can also look at ones that do not match specific regexes. What's really handy about it is that you can do really cool things like this pattern that I show you here. What this pattern represents is a search wherein we're looking for words, and it doesn't matter if they're at the beginning or end of a search, or if they're even together, they could be separated. So this will uncover best bikes we found under $500, or another search term it would match would be like bikes under $1,000, all of which are interesting because we can look at patterns where entities and verbs kind of match different ways of working together. Here's some more examples. I love this pattern, best for. So it could be like best bikes for family rides or best mountain bikes for riding trails. It's really interesting because it allows us to group together different types of terms. I love this one. This is another way of building regex, which is really interesting. You'll notice this dot asterisk verse dot asterisk pipe pattern. What that is saying is that we want to capture all of the searches that contain verse, and that vertical pipe is means or. So we're looking for verse queries, or we're also looking for versus queries. And you'll notice down below in the report, you might or might not be able to see it, this particular search would return 1,000 rows of data from Google Search Console's tool. I want you to just kind of bookmark that number in your brain. Here's another really great pattern. This is what we use at 2 Octobers in order to track all of the different searches that start with question words that we found are really key. You'll notice again, we're returning 1,000 rows of data. What's really cool is that if we get data from the API for that particular query, we can get 8 times as much data. I love that. It's just the power of the API, right? Let's look at this a little bit further. And we're drifting now into the limitations of the tool. We just started by looking at some of the new features. Now we're going to start to really hone in on why Search Console isn't quite good enough for analysis. Number one, 1,000 rows. We're limited in terms of being able to see, analyze, and export out of the tool data at 1,000 rows at a time. Not only that, but each view of the performance tab in Search Console only allows us to see one dimension at a time. Well, how's this for context? This is what we can do when we take our advanced tooling that we're going to share with you later. In this particular view, we're able to combine different dimensions. We can show query, URL, and we can have all these different metrics, whether it's position, clicks, click-through rate, or impressions. And notice that we're able to tie position to the query and URL level. You're going to notice that we talk about that a lot today. And that's a really important distinction for what you can do when you have your data up in BigQuery. Notice around the edges of the report, we've got a ton of different ways to filter the data and to make it more actionable. The thing about the API is it delivers up to 50,000 rows of data per property per day that you're grabbing data for. So we're going from 1,000 rows up to 50,000 rows of data per day. So this ability to filter data is really critical for us to go from this massive haystack down to actionable insights really quickly. Okay, so now you're wondering, cool, Search Console's interface apparently isn't good enough. Why can't I just use the Data Studio's native connectors? Let's jump into that. I think you'll see really quickly why they won't work. Number one, they're super slow. If you just have one of the connectors, and they're available in two flavors, site and URL connectors, you're going to find that they take a long time to load. And when I say take a long time to load, it could be 5 to 10 seconds if you just have one table's worth of data. If you were to join them together, you're going to find that sometimes it takes over a minute for one view to load that visualization. And to me, that's just not workable. Like, we feel like tools should work at the speed of your insights, and they should keep up with you and not get in the way of you investigating more and more flights of insight. Also, you're going to find that working with these two different native connectors lack context. I'll show you what I mean. The site connector gives metrics grouped at the query level. And you'll also notice that if I was to compare the two different connectors with the site connector on the top and the URL connector's data at the bottom, that none of the metrics match. These are both coming from the same time frames. You'll see that we've got the same queries in both of these different tools, but you'll see that the click volumes don't match, the impression volumes don't match, click-through rate doesn't match. Average position is only available in the site connector. So I know it's a total bummer that the average position is only available at the query level. Let's say I needed to optimize content. How would I know what page I should optimize? And you're wondering, like, okay, so the average position is available in the site connector and the URL level shows me page data. Can I just join those two together by query? And I've tried this. And the answer is no. And here's why. If you look at this, this is an example of me joining the two different connectors together using a concept called blending, which is available inside Data Studio. You'll notice that that average position on the right is aggregated at the query level across all of the URLs that are getting impressions, which means that I can't tell which page to optimize with this view. I can't tell which page is actually ranking 9.81. It's showing me that they all are, and I know deep down inside that that's just not accurate. Again, you can't see average position at the page level. So for me, Data Studio with its native connectors are a non-starter, and here's why. They're super slow and they completely hide context. Again, total bummer. Let's turn our attention back to Search Console. We've got a search that we're performing here for our key brand on the site. We can see that it's really popular. We've got over 1,000 rows of data and Google Search Console is truncating that information at 1,000 rows. We're going to now turn our attention to the API so you can understand the value of one versus the other. compare the differences in how many clicks are reported through one and the other, and where the value lies. Boom. The API delivers 25 times as much data. That's why the API matters. That's why I use it, and that's where all the context is coming from. It's also a massive competitive advantage, right? If your competition is only using Search Console and you have access to 25 times as much data and you can provide meaningful context internally in your team, you're going to win. It's the difference between having directional or barely directional insight and being able to turn our vision and seeing with way more clarity what's going on in our little universe. Okay, so if we think about rows of data, you might be thinking, who cares? It's just rows of data. It's kind of interesting. But for me, and probably for you, revenue is really where the rubber meets the road. Well, let's compare the difference between the two platforms. The Search Console interface has X quantity of clicks, and what's available in our visibility of data through the API has a much different amount of click volume. How much? 7,000 clicks are hidden from us for that one key brand, Trek, when we compare the interface and what's available through the API. If we take that number and we do a simple revenue formula calculation with it, and we multiply it by our site's conversion rate and our average order value, we can see that for that one key brand, there are like $40,000 worth of revenue that's hidden from us inside Search Console's interface, which means we can't know about it, we can't optimize for it, and we're just straight up missing opportunities. And again, that's just one out of 285 brands on this website. If we turn our attention to the bottom of the funnel and we target the terms that we typically like to track that relate to the bottom of the funnel for our buyer's journey, we can see that that revenue amount is significantly larger. And again, total bummer. See, the API offers just an astonishing amount of data. It allows us to work inside Data Studio to create user interfaces that match our workflows. If you have a 12-step process for driving performance with your clients, you can create tooling with Data Studio that has 12 pages with 12 sets of answers and questions that you're going to use to drive performance. Super flexible, allows you to work the way that you want, which I'm just crazy excited about. Okay, so how do we do this? We're going to break this down into a couple different steps. We're going to start by talking about our system. The way that we do it at 2 Octobers is we've built a tool in-house wherein we're querying the API every day for every one of our SEO clients, and we're writing their data up into Google BigQuery. And then from there, we use the powerful front end of Google Data Studio to perform our analysis and drive performance. Let's talk about the money a little bit so you can understand like what all this stuff's going to cost. Let's say you don't have the technical strengths in-house to be able to build a tool like what we were able to build. You could subscribe to one of these services below in order to get your data into BigQuery. We're super stoked on Jepto. They're a newcomer, and their pricing is just amazing. You're going to find that this first step is where the majority of your costs for moving your current tooling towards the tooling that I'm sharing with you. This is where your costs are going to lie. It's going to cost between $10 and hundreds of dollars a month per client to get your data up into BigQuery. That cost is totally associated with which service you decide to go with. BigQuery is crazy reasonably priced. You're going to find that it costs between 2 cents and 25 cents per client per month to use your data in BigQuery. In Data Studio, boom, free. I love it. And this is how I got into Data Studio a number of years ago. I tried a number of solutions beforehand. I jumped into Data Studio, and within a weekend, I had working dashboards that helped me do automated reporting for clients. Okay, so using the data. What are the benefits? What are we going to find? What are some strategies? How do we filter that data to make it meaningful? We're going to jump into that now. This is the part of the presentation where you're going to learn some really interesting, really advanced tricks. Number one, you're going to want to be able to get that massive haystack into actionable insights. We do that with things called filters, and they help us segment traffic into really meaningful ways. You're going to want to learn how to build case statements, and you're going to put them inside calculated fields in order to create those different filters. This is technical. We've provided a number of links at the end of our deck, including a 3-part series video to teach you how to build that Google Search Console data pipeline, which gets your data up into BigQuery. We also have docs that will teach you how to build case statements there. I know it sounds technical, but please, totally, it's worth being patient because it's going to increase your visibility into your data in totally amazing ways that you're going to be really stoked on. Layered filtering takes us from that massive data set to actionable insight. Here's an example. This is a page in our toolkit that we use. We call it Topic Explorer. It's really powerful. It allows us to look at all of the search data for our site over a given time range. All the metrics that we care about are over on the left. We've got our search term data in that middle table, and then we've got our matching URLs over in the right-hand table. Up above, you'll see that there's that line. The way that we use the tool is we can enter a head term up above. It'll filter our data down below. You'll notice here, before we've done anything to find any opportunities, that there are about 319,000 different terms, 15,000 URLs. As we use the tool, after we add a head term, we'll notice that we've filtered our URLs from 319,000 down to 25,000. That's massive, and that took just entering 4 letters and hitting enter, right? Which means that we've filtered out 92% of our search terms in a second, right, or 2. We can then pick a term from that middle table there, and what we'll see is that the right-hand table is going to filter from 15,000 URLs down to 5. All of that took us less than 5 seconds to execute, both entering the search term, clicking a row, and all of a sudden we've got actionable insights. What are they? What are these insights? Well, the first thing we can see is the page that we want to optimize, right? We can also see cannibalization, and we can see internal linking opportunities. Let's jump in a little bit and I'll show you how. Let's say we filtered that middle column. We can see these sets of URLs in the right-hand column, and we need to determine which of these specific URLs we want to actually promote in our website and which ones we might want a 301 redirect. To do that, we're going to perform Serp analysis to try and glean what the search intent is for that specific query. It's super important. You're also going to perform competitor analysis to understand the role of backlinks. Because it's not all about intent, we might also find that one piece of content that's in our top 10 or 20 positions has an entirely different content structure than everything else. But let's say it's Home Depot and they've got 30,000 links. That does play into our understanding of what type of content to build, right? But you want to, in general, keep your page that's going to align with the intent that you see in the SERPs. And here's why, because you can't brute force intent. It's one of my favorite sayings that I've ever heard from Kane Jameson. You're also going to 301 redirect or deoptimize the other pages. And when I say deoptimize, I mean taking that target head term and removing it either from the URL, page title, your H1 tag, or any of your other headings in ways that you think will help that target page rank while pushing these others out of the SERPs. Here's an example of us performing that type of analysis. We determined that we want to pick the first row because that's the URL that is always current. The second row you can see shows, that same buyer's guide, but from 2018. Clearly, we want the first row to rank and not the second. The ones that are marked local intent, I don't really care about those very much because I know that if someone is in one of those cities, that those are the pages that are going to rank and those are the ones that are going to drive clicks, and I'm totally fine with that. The bottom row, you're going to notice that I marked it optimized for sale because that's a collection page, and the two different types of content have different intents. One is a buyer's guide, it's more top of funnel, and the for sale intent is all around actually driving revenue. Okay, so we also can see content expansion opportunities if instead of clicking on that middle row to filter our data, we click on the right-hand row. And I'll show you what I mean. If I click on the right-hand row, it's going to filter all of the values that are in that middle column. I can then do analysis on those individual search terms to determine if it makes sense for them to go onto that page that I've decided to target on the right. I can look at the content and determine if there are opportunities to add headings with that search term or if there are other meaningful ways to add it to the page. And by the way, this is a great opportunity for us to think a little bit about how valuable MarketMuse is. They've got tons of amazing tools here. I'm going to focus on two, which are very mature inside their toolkit. The first is Compete. For that same piece of content, I could enter a head term that I want to focus in up above. I can enter my URL to the right of that, and then it's going to show me this really cool grid. And then it gives me a list of really important entities that I'd want to focus in the related topics. And then as I look down below, I can see different colors. Any of those rows that are completely red are ones wherein none of the competition is focusing on that particular term. And there are opportunities for us to be more and more relevant by adding them to our content. I love this page. I think it's crazy powerful. It's showing us all the really important entities and verbs that we would want to focus on, right? The other page that I think is really cool, that I'm really excited to use, is the optimize part of the tooling. Same idea, add a head term, add your content URL. The tool will then suck the content out of that page. It'll perform analysis on it over on the right, and then we can find opportunities to add that to the content. And then the export tool is really cool because I can take the content out of the tool and then I can get it ready for import into my content management system like WordPress, and boom, that's awesome. Love it. Okay, what's the bottom line? Combining different tools like MarketMuse and using that data in combination with our Search Console data is just another way to add meaningful context in order to make great decisions to drive revenues. Okay, let's turn back to all the different ways that we can segment our data inside Data Studio. We can do it with branded versus non-branded, which is really powerful. We can analyze our site based on URL structure. We might find that different subdirectories of our site are performing worse than others because maybe one section has a different page type than another, and it gives us insights into how we might want to assess the performance of each of the different folders. We can also look at the key brands on our site to understand what role they have in driving traffic and to understand where the opportunities lie to drive more revenue for those individual brands. Position bucketing by far is my favorite piece of functionality that is really unlocked almost like a cheat code when you add data coming out of BigQuery to Data Studio. What's amazing about it is that we can then group all of our query data by different position buckets so we can find really interesting opportunities. I had no idea how powerful a function this was until I saw this tweet from Kyle Faber last October. TLDR, after a 10 to 15 hour rabbit hole, it became super clear to me that you just straight up cannot do position bucketing with the native Search Console connectors. Total bummer. Made me feel really stoked that I had all my data in BigQuery. Other stuff you can do because you have position bucketing, you can build your own internal rank tracker. This is ours that we use. You know, a really cool little cheat code is if you enter head terms into that query, you can then understand how an entire topic area is performing over time, which I think is super, super powerful. Notice we're using colors here that work well for folks who are colorblind, because that's really important to us. Okay, striking distance queries. For me, this is like where a lot of the money is. This is when we look at queries that are ranking in position 6 to 15 in order to find easy wins. If you also combine extra filtering onto your pages that incorporate striking distance data, you're going to find that you can drive conversions really efficiently. Here's an example of that. This is our page wherein we're looking at queries that are ranking between position 0 and 15. I also have some filtering applied up above, wherein I'm only looking at terms that contain sale and for sale. Let's understand how this was valuable to us. We had noticed that our page was ranking for mountain bikes for sale, which, as you can imagine, in the bicycle industry is a really important head term or even long tail term to rank for. We also noticed that that term was not on page, in the page title, or in the URL. So what did we do? We added for sale as a suffix to all of our collection page titles. And what did we see as an outcome? We saw really nice growth in clicks. Most importantly, we saw huge growth in revenue, which I'm super stoked on. You can take this concept of making your data more and more actionable by adding conditional formatting. You're going to love this. Here's an example of how to focus in on queries where the position is between 6 and 15, and we're layering impression data on top of that, meaning I only want to look at queries that have at least 200 impressions. I'm using this really bright color scheme down below to make those opportunities absolutely pop off the page. This is especially useful when you have teams that might have junior SEOs on the team. Uncovering opportunities with this like crazy bright color scheme is going to help them see opportunities much, much faster. You can even process or pre-process your data up in BigQuery for even more powerful opportunities. Here are some examples. We love trending queries. That's when we're comparing performance for really important queries, those that have at least X quantity of impressions over time. We can compare, like this is an example page that we use. You'll notice on the right where it says last 7 days. That means I can compare the performance of all of the queries that you're seeing in the left-hand column over time. And I'm comparing the last 7 days worth of data to the 7 days before that. And I can do that at a number of different time ranges, 7, 14, 30, 60, and 90 days. You'll also notice that we've highlighted the clicks change column here. What's amazing about that is that I can compare click volumes over the past 7 days to the 7 days previous, and I can sort by that change column, which is really, really awesome. And it unlocks a lot of different layers of visibility. For example, on the impressions column, think about a news site. And I want to call out Arnout Hellman's for this insight because I think it's super money. Let's say you've got a news site and you publish some articles. They get tons of impressions, tons of clicks, and then that traffic volume falls off the table like almost all news articles. By having a tool like this, you can track when your articles are losing impression volume. You can then rework the content and hopefully try and recapture some of that traffic without avoiding that normal spike pattern that you're used to with news content. Super amazing. Arnout, you are the bomb. Just wanted to call him out for that. It's really great. You can also track your biggest movers. Like, let's say you're noticing that you have massive position changes in a positive direction, going from position 80 down to position 8. That's a great wave to try and ride, right? So that would be a great way to kind of visualize that type of data. Another way that we like to look at data is to look at root queries. Here's an example page from our report that does that. What this uncovers are the words that take place in lots of different queries. It gives us a sense of how important that word is for our entire keyword universe. That top row, for example, bike, you can see that that one word has gotten over 79,000 clicks, 4.4 million impressions, and it takes place in 62,000 different queries that we're getting impressions for. That's important, right? So if I click that word, what's really neat with Data Studio is you can link from one page to another. That will open up our topic explorer with the word bike pre-filled in up at the top like I showed you before. And then I can explore all of the search terms that include bike, and I can see all the pages that I'm getting impressions and clicks on. So I can find opportunities to win. I can also use the filters over on the left, so I can focus on words that have, at least one word, 2, 3, 4, up to 5. I can also jump into topic areas by putting information into that middle drop down that you can see there. I could change it from equals to contains or do regex so that I can explore specific words or topic areas. Crazy powerful. That's really all the time that we have today to learn more about how to use Google Search Console's API. I hope that in showing a number of these advanced techniques with you, that you walk away with this like, oh my God, I got to do this today. And here's why. Having all of this data allows you to make way better decisions for your clients, which means that they're going to be making more revenues, which is also going to make you way stickier as a solution provider. Thanks so much, everybody. I've really appreciated being part of this MarketMuse conference. I'm really excited to connect with you in the hallway, and I just can't wait to see you all in person soon.